Hi, and welcome to Journey Forward with Jory Rose, where you will gain insights, tools, and inspiration to get unstuck and live your best life. Jory is a licensed marriage and family therapist with a passion for helping people cultivate awareness and authenticity so they can show up fully in all aspects of their life. And now, here's Jory.
Hey everyone, it's Jory. Before jumping into today's really important episode on how to engage in a post-COVID world, I want to invite you for an exclusive opportunity to join me in my live 8-week training program in the Journey Forward method. This 8-week course is starting on Thursday, April 29th, and it is an exclusive opportunity because it is never again going to be at this price point. So I am really excited to guide a group of people who are ready to get unstuck and learn the tools to stay unstuck. I will walk you through step by step how to identify the areas in your life in which you are feeling most stuck, how to cultivate the tools to bring greater awareness and intention, recognizing your habits and your patterns and your narratives and your mindsets that are no longer working for you. Because I know that you want to be living a fulfilling life. And I know that it's possible for you to do so. So join me, check out the link in the show notes, and we are beginning Thursday, April 29th, 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. And this is, like I said, an exclusive opportunity. It will never, ever again be at this low price point. I can't wait to journey forward with you and enjoy today's episode. I'm so happy that you tuned in today because there's a lot of really important things that I want to talk about that I have been having conversations, not only with myself in my own mind, but with my family and most importantly, with a lot of clients. And this is around how to engage in a quote post-COVID world and how we are going to re-engage with our old habits, with our social norms, with re-engaging with people in our communities, with travel, with school, with work, with expectations. And this is something that I'm seeing a lot of people have some confusion around and are struggling a little bit in the not knowing. And one of the things that I always like to say is when we are in this area of an unknown, part of the challenge is that we have no working model in our brain to know what it looks like. So if you think back to when COVID just began, part of the struggle was we had no working model to know what it was like to work from home, to do school from home, to be in the midst of a pandemic. And if you listen to any of the Brene Brown podcasts, which I'm a big fan of, but she calls this an FFT. And the reason that it is so hard, and these FFTs, which stands for a fucking first time, because we don't know what to do in an FFT. And this is my language around saying we have no working model to draw upon, to have expectation, to understand ourselves, to understand others, to be able to draw upon habits and patterns that are familiar. Because familiarity and certainty create safety. So in absence of familiarity, in absence of security, in absence of a working model, we don't know what to do, which can cause a little increase in anxiety, in uncertainty, in not knowing how to engage with things that we, quote, should know what to do. And so, one of the areas that I see this coming up most recently with a lot of my clients, including myself, is once you're vaccinated, what does this really mean? And there's this kind of gray area of, is the world back to normal yet? And I don't think the world's going back to normal because there is no normal to go back to, because inherently we as a culture and a society and a world have grown since 2020, the beginning of 2020 when COVID first hit. So we can't inherently go back to normal because we're different than we were then. And we've got to honor those differences. And we've got to honor how things have changed and grown and morphed and evolved. So I think the very, very first step in how we continue to engage in this post-COVID world, whether that means once you're vaccinated, once kids are fully back in school, once you can get on a plane and travel, once restaurants or gyms are fully open, whatever that post-COVID world means to you. We've got to now be really discerning in how you want to live your life. Because we have no FFT for this, this is an opportunity, which I think was actually one of the great opportunities that COVID gave us. And if you've been listening to my podcast, you will know that I actually believe that there's a lot of gifts that we've received. And this, of course, is to not discount the pain and suffering from those who have been ill and have suffered loss. And this is by no means to spiritual bypass those losses and that suffering. And even in our biggest struggles, even in our darkest of times, are opportunities to learn about ourselves, to grow, to get more curious about what am I experiencing, what am I feeling, what am I thinking, and most importantly, how do I move through this? And so as we engage with getting back to some semblance of normalcy, in which I will define by just not having shelter in place, having restaurants and perhaps gyms and social gatherings and school and even workplace environments being opened again. As we engage in these interactions, there's some people who were just like rushing towards the finish line, get me back to normal. I want to just forget the past year ever happened. And I just want things the way that they used to be. But there's many of us who feel things very deeply, who are highly sensitive, and who are experiencing some anxiety and uncertainty around, how do I engage? How do I have a salutation? Do I shake someone's hand? Well, that doesn't feel safe. Do I fist bump? Well, I'm not sure that feels safe. Can I ever give a hug? Can I give a hug and just like turn my head all the way the other direction so I'm not breathing anybody or near anybody? How will I be in an environment if I'm, let's say, at a restaurant and there's a shared group with my group, a basket of bread or a basket of chips? Am I going to feel comfortable engaging in any shared food environments? How am I going to feel when, my kids who aren't vaccinated are being around other kids, even though the adults might be? Like, there's so many layers and levels to this that are part of our everyday lives that during shelter in place, we didn't have to face. These choices were eliminated. And we were very, very concerned around others. Even for many people, going to the grocery store, it felt overwhelming. Because it felt emotionally exhausting to be out because the fear was really high. And so now with the vaccines and the numbers being lower, the fear has gone down, but we still don't have a working model for social engagement. So one of the things that I invite you to consider as you listen to this episode is a couple of different areas. The first one I'm going to talk about is boundaries. And how can you begin to set some boundaries for yourself that feel in alignment with your values and in a way in which you can express to other people where you're at and around what is your comfort level? And the difficult part of drawing boundaries or setting boundaries or expressing boundaries is oftentimes the fear of how it's going to be received. Is someone going to judge you for saying, you know what, I'm not feeling comfortable sharing in this basket of chips, or I'm not feeling comfortable coming inside of your home, but I'm happy to stay outside in your backyard, or I'm not comfortable giving you a fist bump. And so I'm just going to take a step back and, I'll do a head nod or some other acknowledgement of your presence. Because one of the difficult reasons we have in drawing boundaries is a fear of judgment from others. What's going to be the perception of how are we going to be received? But we also have a difficult time drawing boundaries when we are uncertain within ourselves. What even is my boundary? Because I've noticed when people draw very discerning boundaries, when they're very clear in this is who I am, this is my boundary, unapologetically, it gets received quite well. Because I actually believe if you set a boundary, people are going to want to respect it. I think boundaries are harder to receive when the person is uncertain of the boundary. And so the other person who's on the other side of the boundary isn't quite sure, well, I'm not really sure what they meant by this, so I'm not really sure of the expectation around it. I don't really think people judge people's boundaries. I honestly don't. And maybe that's my optimistic nature, but if someone says when I first come up, hey, I'm so happy to see you, and I'm feeling a little uncomfortable around any form of touch or really close proximity. So as we talk, just so you know, if I happen to take a little bit of a step back, please don't get offended. I'm still trying to figure out how to engage in this post-pandemic interactions. I really don't think someone's going to be like, wow, she's bitchy. I would actually believe that if someone were to say that, they would say, oh, okay, I respect that. But if we are uncertain in our ability to be around others and we're feeling anxious and we have a lot of discomfort, we might not know how to say it. Therefore, our actions might feel uncomfortable to the other person. And that might cause some judgment like, wow, they didn't really seem happy to be here. They weren't really friendly. They kept, kind of making this look on their face that looked like they were frustrated or angry. And, I'm just kind of giving some different possibilities. But the idea here is to get really clear as we have this opportunity to emerge from what I've called this great pause, right? The world gave us an opportunity to hit a reset button. So as you emerge from our collective shelter in place and step into an engaged social world once again, I invite you to be really intentional in how you step back into this post-COVID world. And the first reminder is we're not going back to normal. There is no normal. We are cultivating, creating a new normal as a culture, as a society, as a world. Just like we had to do post 9/11, we had to adopt new norms and new behaviors that at first feel really strange and awkward and difficult and challenging. And eventually they become a new normal. But for right now, as we emerge from this cocooned period of time in which we have been retreated from others, I invite you, like I said, to get really intentional around how you want to engage in the world post-COVID. So the first part around that is boundaries. Well, it's hard to know how to set the boundaries if you are uncertain with what's underneath it. And so I love using values as root markers for decision making. So if you understand your values, then you have an easier time in making discerning choices because you're being values driven. And this really aligns with my strong value of intention. Right? Having intention is one of the 3 words that I use to define what it means to practice mindfulness. So when I'm talking about how to be more mindful, it's awareness, it's paying attention to our habits and our patterns, but it's having intention as well. And to be intentional truly is to know, why am I doing what I'm doing? Because if our old habit was to live life on autopilot, if our old habit was to just go through the motions, our old habits were so well ingrained, we didn't even recognize what was a choice versus what was something that we could choose not to do. But now as we emerge into this post-COVID world, we have an opportunity to be ultra intentional in our choices, in our actions, and in how we decide to spend our time, energy, and money. We have the choice on how to decide, why are we doing what we're doing? Am I getting together with this group of people because I feel I have to out of obligation? Or am I doing it because this is fulfilling to me and this is worth my time and energy to be here? Am I going through the motions of my life on autopilot, or am I in the driver's seat of my own life, being very clear in my values behind my decisions? So I used to go along with this philosophy in decision making of things were either a hell yes or a hell no. And this was based in a great article I had read years ago around dating. And while I loved the idea, because it's either, if you're not all in, then you must be out. And I think that was a great starting point for me to think about this. But over the years, and as I got to really want to be practical in my decision making and pragmatic and not just entirely use my gut response, I think the hell yes, hell no is a great starting point. But if I evolve that line of thinking, to me, it now comes to, is it a discerning yes versus a discerning no? And the discerning component is, let me understand why this has become a yes, and let me know why this has become a no. And underneath that discerning ability is to know your values. If you say yes to a social engagement with someone, know why you're doing it. And of course, sometimes we have to do things out of obligation, and we can give ourselves compassion for that. But when it comes to discerning and saying no to an opportunity or to an offer or to a social engagement, it's okay. And I give you guys permission to be really choosy in what you say yes and what you say no to. And there might be a belief that many people have that the world is back open. I should be doing the things that I did before. I should be doing what's expected of me. I should be doing what others are doing. And I'm giving you permission to not have to do that. If we just go back blindly into the way things were and unintentionally go through our lives making choices without knowing what was behind it, then I believe you haven't really learned the lessons that you were given the opportunity to learn during this year of COVID. This isn't a judgment. This is simply an offering, right? There's many people who aren't going to even consider the past year of this pause and are just going to jump right into the deep end of the way their life was. And if that works for them, then that's great. But I know there is a great many of people who are not wanting to jump back into everything the way it was. Because I don't know about you guys, but I know a lot of the way things that I was doing it actually didn't really work for me. And I felt like I had no other choice but to have to do what I always did. And I recently have made some very big choices to not go back to the way things were. And it's going to look different. And it's still an FFT because I'm still cultivating what this looks like. And I know I'm in alignment with my values. I know that my value of my energy is more important than I ever gave it credit for in the past. And, when I used to run for 12 to 14 hours a day, whether it was schlepping my kids places or working out or taking on too much, there was a reason I was exhausted and depleted because I wasn't intentional to what I said yes and what I said no to. So through this great pause, for me, I have learned the value of stillness, the value of intentionally putting my time, energy, and money to where I choose to, not just where it's been habit to do so. So as you get offers, as you get invitations, as you begin to make plans in how to engage in this post-COVID world, just get curious with yourself. Invite yourself to have a moment to pause to say, why am I saying yes to this? Or why am I saying no to it? What is the value underneath it that is guiding my decision? Because let me tell you this, when you are values driven, when you understand your top and core values and you utilize those values as route markers for your decisions and guideposts and northern stars, they will never guide you in the wrong way. It's when we don't pay attention to the gut check inside of us, when we don't pay attention to our internal response, then we are out of alignment with our values. Now, that's not to say that every value is going to align for every decision. We've got different parts of ourselves that are going to show up, right? Maybe you've got a certain value set around your home and family life that is going to look a little bit different for your career or your friendships or your, family members, your extended family. But at the core of it are some core values that ideally are somewhat consistent in how you live your life. And, there's a lot of different ways to determine your core values. They can be either areas in which you strive to create more of something in your life, or maybe these are the areas that you find the most important. And I'll actually include in the show notes one of my favorite ways to get started on determining your core values is a sheet of a paper that has about 100 words on it. And just go through and you circled all of the top words that really stand out to you. Maybe it's words such as family or freedom, peace, accountability, spirituality, awareness, attention, fitness, health. There's lots of different value sets. Love, family, growth. If you start to circle the words that you are most in alignment with, of either what you already have in your life or what you'd like to bring more of it in, maybe you narrow it down to a list of 10. Maybe it's a list of 10 or 15, but then see if you can group them together into different categories and have these umbrella one value that other words can fit into. One of my top values is authenticity. If I am not authentic to myself, then I am completely out of alignment. And then I know it's not the right choice for me. But so many of my values fit under my umbrella of authenticity. This has to do with my relationships, both personal and my romantic relationship with my partner and my kids. The value of authenticity is going to show up in how I cultivate my business and all the work that I'm creating. When I'm out of alignment, it's not the right choice for me. So if you are struggling in determining how to cultivate your values around how to engage in this post-COVID world, to know how to make a discerning yes or how to make a discerning no, check out the values sheet in the show notes. It will be a great beginning point to understand yourself. And once you know those values, and understand too, may just say, these values might have changed from pre-COVID to now. So don't just go with what your values have always been, because I know I used to have a little bit of the glorification of busyness. I used to pride myself on, I can go 17 places in one day and look how accomplished and successful I was. That's not a value I want to live by anymore. That no longer serves me. My value of stillness and slowing down has superseded my value of wanting to do it all. So my values have changed a bit over the past year. And this is what I'm talking about. We've had growth. We've had opportunity to learn about ourselves. So are we using this awareness in choosing how we move forward? So I hope that makes sense. So, again, as we engage in this post-COVID world, we're looking at our boundaries, how we make decisions, what are we doing to be intentional of how we engage with both ourselves and others, and what are our values underneath this decision-making process. Because some people really have this response to the world opening back up, and they're like, oh my God, yes, get me back out there, just get me back to everything the way it was. And other people are like, oh, I don't really know what I feel about this. This has been a cause of a lot of anxiety for some people. I'm not sure how to engage. I'm not sure what the social norms are. I'm not sure how I want to be living my life. I'm not sure what's important to me anymore. So also understand that if you are feeling any social anxiety, I guarantee you are not the only one. Even if others are perceived to not experience it, we are still in the midst and are coming through an overwhelmingly, and I hate to say the word because it's overused, unprecedented time that every single person on the planet has been unified in experiencing. I can't really think of too many things in which the entire planet has all been affected by the same exact thing. No one who has been alive in the past year can step away from its impact. So in this common humanity, which is one of the definitions of self-compassion, is remember, you are not the only one. Oftentimes, anxieties can increase when we feel a perceived sense of being alone in our anxiety. So have comfort. You are not the only one who is questioning, how do I go through this? And in fact, if we can be vulnerable enough to have this conversation with others, we might actually be able to create some deeper connections and some more healthy conversation around, how are we going to do this? Have these conversations, not just with the family that you live with your extended family, but with your friends, with your coworkers. Make it known that you're questioning how to go about doing this. So you can, together with the people around you, not just be vulnerable, not just be uncertain, but consciously and together create some new habits and patterns that work for the both of you. So the social anxiety piece, I think, is something that we're going to be experiencing for quite some time. People aren't really sure how to engage with others. If you listened to my podcast episode that came out a couple weeks ago that I did with John around core beliefs, primal world beliefs, mindsets, you might have had a previous belief that the world was safe and others are safe. And now, due to COVID, we might have been, we definitely have been forced to on some of them, but we might have really adopted some new value sets, some new belief systems around the world. And I'll be honest, I used to not at all be a germaphobe. I have some embarrassing stories that I may or may not decide to share, but I was not a germaphobe. And now I see others as not super clean. And that's not based on anything else, but in a pandemic, I've had to be very cautious. And so my world belief in the safety of other people has been affected. And I now can consciously decide how to move forward based on that fundamental belief having been shifted. So the anxiety we have around this is going to be universal. So if you're feeling like, I don't know how to do this, please have compassion for yourself that you are not the only one. And actually naming this to others will not only help create the conversation of how do we do this together, but will also help to decrease your own anxiety, because we know that naming it aloud in our own mind or aloud with others will quiet down that anxiety, because when you name it, you give it room to exist. Otherwise, we are trying to deny, dismiss, or ignore it, pretending it's not really there. And how could it not be there? This is where we're all at as a society. So when you're coming to this opportunity to make choices of how to engage with the world, and you have to come upon decision making, I invite you to also be patient. Allow yourself to slow down. Allow yourself to really not be automatic in your response. Sure, do the gut check. Is it a hell yes or hell no? And then take the time to say, why is it a discerning yes and why is it a discerning no? Also, give yourself the flexibility to say, you know what? I thought I was going to be comfortable in this situation, and it turns out now that I'm here, I'm having some discomfort around it, so I'm going to have to potentially change my mind. I think giving yourself the compassion to not only say to yourself, this is really hard, but to be kind to yourself in the process rather than judgmental. I have always said the opposite of judgment is compassion. So if you're experiencing judgment around your not knowing how to engage in this post-COVID world, offer yourself compassion instead. And I mentioned one of them, but I'm going to remind you that there are three components of self-compassion per the work of Krista Neff. It's common humanity, which is to remember you're not the only one, which is mindfulness, which is to accept what's arising, being here in this present moment, and kindness. So the self-compassion around, this is really hard right now. I don't have a working model for what this looks like. I'm not sure how to answer your question around, am I going to engage in this activity or am I not? I don't know how to respond. So can you please give me some time and space to be able to make this decision? And I think the more we can allow this flexibility, the easier we will have as a time moving forward. And as I've said, everyone is being affected by this. Now, just because not everyone is showing that they're being affected doesn't mean that there's something deep down. And for those who are unaware, they will continue to stay unaware. And that's, again, not a judgment. It's just simply an awareness of mine and what I'm noticing. But I also know many people feel things very deeply. Many people are more highly sensitive than they let on to. And this has affected us on a fundamental level. And this COVID experience has affected our ability to move through our lives with the same ease that we always have. And I don't think that's a bad thing. I think there's a beautiful gift to say, I get to decide what serves me. And as I make a decision moving forward, I can really discern, what am I giving up and what am I gaining? Versus maybe I just am doing what I always did out of obligation or expectation from myself or from others. So again, conscious discernment is to ask yourself, why am I doing what I'm doing? Why am I making the choices I'm making? What are the values underneath it? And what are the boundaries I have to draw? And what are my intentions? Am I being intentional on how I spend my time, energy, and money? Or am I being unaware, unconscious in how I make these choices? And I just want to end by reminding you, don't discount the growth that you've had over the past year. You know, COVID has taught us so much. And I invite you just to take a moment, perhaps even journal about it, and ask yourself, what have I learned about myself over this past year that maybe I haven't acknowledged or given myself credit for? Or maybe the things that I really have learned are the fundamental, most important things to me, and everything else I can kind of let go. And with this awareness of how you've grown, with this awareness of your highest values, of what is most important and how you truly want to be living your life, that awareness will inform you of some of the ways to move forward. Because it's just like stretching a new muscle, right? Or building a new muscle, that we are building the muscle for social engagement post-COVID. We have no working model for this. This is an FFT. When COVID first hit, it was an FFT of how to be in a pandemic. And now we are in the FFT of how do I engage in social life post-pandemic. We're still figuring it all out. Give yourself permission for the time to figure this out. Come back to your core beliefs. How do I see the world, myself, and others? Come back to your values. How do I want to be living my life? What are the things that are guiding me in my decision making? And at the very root of it all, let me honor what's arising inside of me without apology and without judgment. Let me allow myself the compassion to notice and to pay attention to both my gut check, to both my internal response, to the thoughts arising in my mind. Let me give all of it room to exist so I can be present, conscious, and aware as I take my step out of my home into the world post-COVID. And let me communicate this with other people unapologetically. I guarantee people want to respect your boundaries. And if they don't want to respect your boundaries, then those maybe aren't the right people for you to be engaging with, and that's good information to have. But in absence of you having a clear boundary, people might not respect because they won't know what line is acceptable to cross and to not. And maybe that's true for yourself as well internally. Knowing what your boundaries are, knowing what your limits are, knowing where you are no longer in alignment with yourself, with your core values, with your intentions. So even though I don't have the answers, I wish I did, all I can do is pose the questions for you to ask yourself. So I want to wrap up by saying, have compassion. This is another new era that we are stepping into where we do not have a working model. And if you are someone who is listening, I imagine that you are hoping to live a more mindful life. And you are hoping to live a life with greater awareness, attention, and intention. So you can consciously Be doing what you're doing on purpose so that you are in the driver's seat of your own life. So as you notice all of the thoughts, all of the emotions, all of the experiences that we have had over the past year, taking into account what you've learned and deciding, how do I want to move forward intentionally? This is the thing I invite you to consider. And the good news is there's no right and there's no wrong. The only difficult choice here is in really discerning what's important to you. And maybe it's not even so difficult. For some people, it's a much easier practice. But until you know what's important, you won't know how to enact that. You won't know how to support it and engage on purpose based on those things. And because the anxiety is understandable, and like I said, there's a lot of social anxiety going on right now. Be very aware of when the anxiety is the thing driving your decisions or not. Because as I work with a lot of my clients around, we've got to be able to separate out the anxiety from the decision making. Because the anxiety is something that may or may not always be there, right? And so we've got to learn the tools on managing our own anxiety, which comes down to regulation, comes down to awareness, comes down to how we are engaging with our thoughts, how we're honoring our emotions that are arising. So managing the anxiety is separate from being able to make the decisions. The decisions are based on our values, our intentions, our discernment, and understanding, why am I doing what I'm doing? So I want to help you just see that we can separate out these two different phenomena. Anxiety from decision-making are two different things. But making decisions can cause anxiety. So let's manage that. And then come back to a different set of tools for how do I engage in the world post-pandemic. I hope that you guys found this episode to be helpful. Like I said, it's not really giving the answer, just more about asking the questions and inviting you to sit with what comes up for you as a result of these questions. I would love to hear feedback. Please feel free to always reach out to me through social media on Instagram or on Facebook. And as always, you can go to the website, joryrose.com, and email me there as well. But I do really hope, it is my big universal hope, that as we emerge post-COVID, that we are all collectively doing it on purpose. I know that I have already begun to make different decisions based on what I not only have learned about myself in this past year, but for what I have really seen loud and clear of what's most important to me. And I would be remiss to not use this awareness from the past year to move forward intentionally. So even though I have no working model for it, I am building the muscle, creating my new normal. And I want to role model that in authenticity to you guys. And at times it's not easy. And I'm human, as we are all experiencing this same dynamic together. So allow this common humanity to unite us rather than help make you feel different for experiencing the challenge around all of this. So thanks so much for tuning in today. And I hope that you guys take care and be well.
To continue your journey forward, find Jory Rose on Facebook and Instagram to become part of her growing community. You can also gain access to her meditations, books, online classes, or to sign up for an upcoming retreat. Visit her at joryrose.com. That's JOREEROSE.com.